Taking a break from my Slayer's Fang builds to bring you a build on Ballidorse Wrathweavers. These were just re-enabled this week after being disabled for quite a long time. And I think I finally found a build that I can kind of get behind with this. And it's a Prismatic build, and it's purely focused on getting Winter's Wrath, the stasis super, as quick as possible, and then using it to deal some pretty solid damage, thanks to the exotics, plus 150% damage boost to shatter damage from the super. That's kind of complicated, but that is the best part of this exotic that does a bunch of different things, and I think it's pretty solid. And with the roaming super buffs, we can get those stasis, we can get that stasis super back pretty quick. We've got it here in like just over 30 seconds, which is solid, but we're using every single tool in our tool belt to get our super back. We're using ability spam, we're making a ton of orbs, we're using an exotic kinetic primary, which have one of the highest conversion rates of damage to super. And of course it's a roaming super, so it's getting even more buffs on top of that. We're using mods, just everything we can. And it works out pretty well. We've got our super back really quick. It's pretty effective. And we also have the great Prismatic kit with Devour and ability spam. You can see us popping the super here. All these orange bar enemies are getting crunched. We took out a third of the boss's health in one hit, and we've wiped it out in 3 blasts, which is really great. That sounds good to you? Let's get into it. I'm Engineer. The core thing here is the exotic Ballidorse Wrathweavers, and this does several things. So, first, it is going to boost the damage of enemies frozen by Winter's Wrath when they shatter by plus 150%. That's a little bit confusing. When you freeze enemies, whatever shatters them will have boosted damage. You don't have to do it, you definitely can, but if you're in a team, other people could break that shatter, and the shatter damage should be increased. The second thing it does is when you do the pulse, that will give allies within 30 meters, which is a huge radius, 4 times stasis weapon surge, that's plus 25% damage for 15 seconds, and it'll give maximum frost armor stacks, which is pretty solid, very good for team play. Mostly only good for damage phases though, which I don't know if I would take this into a damage phase because it's not a very high damage exotic. But with some coordination, there could be something there. It will also give you some amount of super for each ally buffed, but there hasn't been a lot of testing on this, mostly because it's been disabled so long. One of the other things it does is it enhances the Frostpulse aspect on stasis, and it will give you and allies 2 times weapon surge, and it'll give you maximum frost armor. It's pretty good. It'll give you a little bit of super depending on how many allies you buff, but it's 2% per ally, which is just not a lot. And honestly, the Frostpulse aspect is rough. Lastly, when you come out of Winter's Wrath, you get maximum frost armor stacks to the user, which is great. And you also will pick up those 4 times weapon surges, which I think isn't actually shown here, but you do. Every time I've looked at this, I've tried to use every feature of it. I've tried a lot on stasis to make Frostpulse work. It is a bad aspect. It does not work very well. It doesn't do enough. It just gives you a freezing pulse when you do your rift. That's it. It's one of the first aspects ever added to the game, and it's just not good enough. Another thing about this too is with the flat gain penalties that were put in Season of the Wish, and I have a whole video on that if you're not sure what that is. All sources of chunk ability energy for rifts got halved because rifts have a relatively long cooldown for class abilities, so it's just half. Rifts already have a long cooldown. It's base 82 seconds, and then all your sources of flat gains are small, and a lot of the percentage increases for class ability are also relatively small. And on stasis, you don't have any of those. You have 1 fragment that can give you a little bit of class ability, and it's affected by flat gain penalty. So it's rough. I don't recommend it. And you're always giving up a better aspect to even use it. So that first of all sucks. So then once I dropped that, I was like, well, we're pretty much just focused on the shatter damage. What should we do with it? And if we're going to just focus on the super, I figured let's go to Prismatic, not stasis, because Prismatic has some better support and some good super regen. So that's how we end up here. All I had to say, we are focused on the super. We want to get the super and we want to do damage with it. And that's the entire build. Now, if you need to acquire this exotic, you need to own Lightfall. Then you can get it from Vex Strike Force or Rahul's Novel Decryption. Your stat priorities are the standard spread that I recommend in most videos: resilience, discipline, recovery, strength, and luck. Those are the stats that you should focus on with this exotic. All right, so real quickly, aspects and abilities. Really straightforward. We're going to take Feed the Void because it gives us Enhanced Devour, which will give us grenade energy back and heal us pretty much fully every time we get a kill. You do have to get 1 ability kill to start it off, but then after that, you're good to go, and it can just be any kill. Our other aspect is going to be Lightning Surge, because this is a really good AoE It's pretty spammable, especially when we're in Transcendence, and it's a good way to get a lot of kills quickly and get your super back. This is the slide melee. It instantly makes you amplified, does some good damage, and jolts enemies, so all around solid. Our super is obviously Winter's Wrath. That's kind of all we're doing. Our grenade wants to be Vortex Grenade, and this is because it can print orbs on crowds. If you take triple firepower, you can make an orb every 1 second that you get a kill, so that's really good. It does have a 50% flat gain factor, which also sucks, but this is the best way to make orbs, and it can get a lot of kills if you have the right setup. On our melee, we're going to take Arcane Needle, purely because it has 3 charges, and that lets us do more Lightning Surge, especially in Transcendence. Lastly, our class ability, very flexible, but Phoenix Dive's good. It's fast, and lets you keep moving, which is kind of what we're doing. On our Fragments, I would recommend taking Faceted Dominance. That'll make that Void Grenade weaken. It will also make your Transcendence Grenade weaken because it counts as a Void Grenade, so weakening is always good, 15% more damage. Faceted Balance will just give us a little bit more melee energy coming in because we're mostly going to be getting light damage kills, and that'll just give us that melee energy back as we get multi-kills, which is very easy with either Lightning Surge or Vortex Grenade. On the defensive front, we're going to take Faceted Protection for damage resistance while surrounded. It's just really solid. And then we're going to take Faceted Purpose. Because as we pick up orbs, we'll get a little bit of frost armor. This is 4.5% per stack, and we can only get 5 stacks. So that caps out at 22.5%, which is not a lot. I wish we could get one of the other damage resistances here, but it's something, and it helps a little bit, and you'll make a lot of orbs, so you'll have that up pretty constantly. And with Winter's Wrath, you'll get a full stack of it, and it's good just to keep topping it up, because it'll stay at that full stack. Lastly, we're going to take Faceted Grace because we're going to focus on a kinetic weapon because that is one of the best ways to get super back because of the intrinsic buffs to those. Now, for some other fragments you may want to consider, Faceted Dawn is good. It gives you Radiant, which is 25% more weapon damage, but it only lasts for 5 seconds on a melee. That's not bad, but the duration's just too short, so not necessarily too recommended. The other fragment to maybe consider is Faceted Sacrifice. It'll just balance out your Transcendence gauge a little bit, but honestly, Winter's Wrath Super will just completely max out that Darkness gauge after you use it once. So I don't think you really need this, but it's good for at least getting the loop started. Moving over mods and armor stats, our mods are 100% focused on super energy. So we are taking Ashes to Assets and hands-on on the helmet. We're also taking Kinetic Siphon because we're trying to make as many orbs as possible. We're taking triple firepower, which will take the cooldown of firepower down to 1 second from 10 seconds. We want to get as many orbs out of that as possible, but also increase the amount of super we get per orb. Check out the Destiny Data Compendium if you want to see exactly what it does, or watch my video on super energy regen because I cover all that. On our legs, we're actually going to take kinetic siphons because we need to boost that kinetic weapon damage as much as possible to get as much super energy out of it. We're going to take time dilation with that, and we're also going to take Reaper to have 1 more source of orbs. In this build, we have 3 different sources of orbs, and we have 2 different sources of super energy outside of orbs, so pretty solid. On our stats, once again, standard priority, max out your resilience, max out your discipline, get as much strength and recovery as you can, and elect the 30. Very briefly, it's not this slide, but I'm not going to cover artifact perks because the episode's so close to being over, and I don't think it's really worth it. But let's talk about weapons. The main weapon that I want to highlight here is Khvostov. So once again, plugging my super video, which you should check out, and I will link at the end of this. The most efficient weapons to generate super energy are primary weapons. Specials and heavies take a debuff. And then it's purely based on DPS. Kinetic weapons get an intrinsic damage buff to all enemies. Exotic weapons get an intrinsic buff to common enemies, that's your red bars and stuff. So those are pretty good. And then you just want a kinetic exotic primary that does pretty good damage. And you have 3 great options here: Khvostov, Bad Juju, and Outbreak Perfected. Now, Bad Juju gives inherent super energy, but its damage just is not quite as good as I personally like. Outbreak Perfected is really good, especially on single targets. But honestly, for like ad clear, Khvostov is great because of the ricocheting rounds. And if you see here, those ricocheting rounds deal 252% damage, which is crazy. And that damage will add up pretty considerably. You will get your super back real fast. So that's what I recommend. It's really good. If you don't have it, use these other ones. You'll be just fine. On your energy slot, literally anything works. Not really a focus of this. Heavy slot, use the stasis weapon. Banshee's VS Chill Inhibitor, which you can get because of the weapon combo perk issues. If you've done Vesper's Host for free, go grab that. Really good. But there's some other good stasis weapons too. Just lastly, I just want to mention something that I kind of discovered as I was looking at this video. and it's the dealer's choice origin trait. So this is the Pale Heart Weapons origin trait. And what this does is as you equip more of these weapons at once, you get super ability energy as you get kills with those weapons. So with one weapon, you're getting 0.3% super energy per kill, not a lot. Two, you get 1.6%, which is pretty respectable. This is more than Thresh. That's, I think, more than what Bad Juju actually does. But if you equip 3 of these weapons, you'll get 3% super ability energy on each kill, which is crazy. Now, I don't know if you really want to do that because those weapons are fine, but especially the heavy slot are just kind of medium, and it really limits you in what elements you can use and all that stuff. So one thing to note with this though is that Ace of Spades and Khvostov and Stillhunt count towards this, but they don't get the super ability energy benefit. So this is something to consider if you just want to juice your super energy, but I think actually using the exotic kinetic primary Khvostov is good. But if you really want to mix it up, you can throw like maybe a fusion rifle in your energy slot and then like the Pro Memoria machine gun in your heavy slot and just be getting some extra super energy from those as you use them on top of Khvostov. Just something to think about. I didn't need it in this video, but I thought it was kind of a nifty way to get super energy. Now, just showing this build off a little bit more. This is once again opening Tomb of Elders, kind of hectic, surrounded by enemies, so pretty good way to demonstrate builds. And once again, this is just focused mostly on the Prismatic kit here because we have Vortex Grenades, we have Lightning Surge, which will clear enemies really fast. On top of that, in between that, we have Khvostov, which is really solid, and when you pick up an orb, you get those ricocheting rounds, which are really good. Once again, we're making a lot of orbs, so. Probably should mention this on the weapon side, but if you're really not sure what to use in the energy slot, one good recommendation is the VS Velocity Baton. That is the area denial grenade launcher from Vesper's Host. With attrition orbs, it will also make a lot of orbs. You just kind of throw it on the field, and as long as enemies are getting hit, you make orbs. Good option. See here, we have already almost got our super, and it's been less than a minute of just kind of scattered gameplay. And we're just going to go ahead and pop it, because super's great, and at this point, it just adds on the field, so we're going to clear those out. You can see, like, those mini-boss tier enemies, just one shatter breaks them, so it's pretty good. Once again, on bosses, I don't know if it's quite good, but just like medium enemies like that just crushes them. And you can still see if you watch the feed in the bottom left, just orbs, orbs, orbs. I'm probably missing some of the orbs and not picking them up. Lightning Surge is an aspect that I think a lot of people kind of look down on, but it's really solid. It's got a lot of buffs. It gives you good damage resistance while you're in it so that you're not going to get killed in the middle of the animation or something. And it just clears out whole crowds thanks to Jolt and just the inherent AoE of it. We've popped Transcendence here. This happened a little while ago, but Transcendence is really good. You get 20% damage resistance while you're in it, and you get really good ability spam so you can get your super back. And we've got our super back already, so that's why we do it. And once you've used one super, it's really easy to keep that loop going because we get so much light damage, and then the super gives us so much our darkness gauge is already full. We just lost Transcendence, and it's just full. See, we chunked down this boss pretty decently. We can't quite kill him solo, which is, I don't know, a little bit disappointing, but I think it's pretty fair for roaming super, and it's generally about what I've seen. I hadn't hit that boss with anything else before this, so that's purely how much damage we can do on it. I'll try for those ricochet shields. What those have. Nice thing about the kinetic primary and using Facet of Grace is it will fill in whichever gauge you are lower on, whatever it is, or it'll fill in both of them if you're low on both. So really solid, and it does okay damage. We actually whittle this boss down with it. Popping Transcendence just so I can do my finisher, and that's pretty much it. So just to go over that gameplay loop, use your Vortex Grenade and Lightning Surge deliberately to gain super, make orbs. Collect those orbs and mix in Khvostov for some AoE weapon damage, and then just use your super when it's available for kills. That should probably finish out your Transcendence gauge after you come out of the super. Use Transcendence to do more ability spam, and that's the loop. You just keep doing that, and it should work pretty well. This build's pretty solid. I still think Ballidorse Wrathweavers need a lot of buffs, and I really hope Bungie finally makes them as good as they should be, but this is probably the best build you can do with it. It's mainly on that Prismatic kit, but I think it's really solid. Definitely check it out, see if it's fun for you. That's pretty much all I've got for the build. As always, appreciate all the support. Definitely join my Discord. I've seen a few people joining it, and I've been previewing builds as I talk about them and talking with people about things they like. I should have a couple more Slayer's Fang builds coming out, and then I'm not sure what after that. So let me know what you think. If you have any questions, put them in the comments, and with that, I'll let you go. Thanks. Have a good one.